There we go. I think we are live. It will take a little bit for the waiting room to open up, but now people can actually join the session.
Fantastic.
We'll see. We'll see who shows up. We beat
They're
the
coming
record.
in.
We beat the record.
What's the record?
The record was 74.
Oh,
We
okay.
were at around 85, I believe.
Well, there's also like how many people sign up and there's how many people that come. We only get the most committed lawyers that show up.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Anybody can sign up, right? It's showing up.
That's it. Exactly. So we've got, a bunch of people that are piling in. We'll give everybody a quick minute to get settled. If you would like, feel free to use the chat. We did test it out. If you want to say where you're dialing in from, what your practice area is, and we'll try to make this as personalized as we can. While people are rolling in here, how about we just do some brief introductions? All right. Everybody, I'll be your host, Ron Latz. This is part of the LegalFenix webinar series. I host these conversations monthly to give everybody a behind the scenes look into other businesses, whether it's legal marketing, technology, sales, business development. And today's session, we'll be talking all about lawyer referrals. Elise, want to give a brief intro?
Hi, everybody. My name is Elise Holtzman. I am hanging out with you here in New Jersey, North Jersey, just outside of New York City. I am a former practicing lawyer and the founder and CEO of The Lawyer's Edge, which since 2008 has provided coaching, training, and consulting exclusively for lawyers and law firms, all in the areas of business development and leader development. So whether you're looking to build a book of business or you already have a big book of business and want to grow it, refine it, whether you're stepping into leadership roles, which often tends to happen around the time that people start to want to become rainmakers, you're the kind of people that we work with on a regular basis. So I'm thrilled to be here today to talk about one of my favorite subtopics in the topic of business development.
Great. Thanks so much, Steve. Give everyone a brief overview here.
Yeah, thank you, Ron and Elise. Always great to see you. I'm Steve Fretzin, and for the last 17 years, I've been working exclusively with individual lawyers, helping them to dramatically grow their law practices. You've probably said at some point, they never taught me this in law school. And that list goes on of operations and technology and finance and business development is no different. So I work with lawyers all around the world in like 5 countries, working with them to develop plans and processes and tactics to go ahead and develop a consistent book of business and grow dramatically every year. When I'm not busy doing that with a select group of clients, I have a new book being published soon behind me. It's 101 Top Rainmakers: Secrets to Developing and Growing a Large Law Practice. And I've got, I write for Above the Law, and of course the Be That Lawyer podcast coming up on 500 episodes. Just landed John Morgan as my 500th episode, so I'm interviewing him tomorrow. And I'm very excited to be here, and thank you, Ron, for inviting me.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Steve and Elise. Really appreciate it. 2 housekeeping items, and we will jump right in. First and foremost, if you don't mind, Irv, I do see that you've raised your hand. If you don't mind to use the chat or the Q&A, we're going to be fielding questions throughout this entire session. I can promise you the 3 or 4 that have been done previously, we have always run out of time, which leads me to the next housekeeping item. If you would like one of us to go deeper into a topic, if we didn't cover something in as much depth as you would like, there will be a questionnaire, 1 question at the end of this session. If you'd like to speak to anybody on this call, any of the panelists here, to go deeper into one of the topics, by all means, please do so. Otherwise, I'll try to manage the chat and the questions. I'll throw them at you, Steve and Elise, as they come in. But what I want to do here is, because we likely have a wide range of individuals, right? Maybe we've got some business development pros. Maybe we've got some other individuals that are just trying to, get their feet in the water. They're unsure what to do, and that's why they're on this session. So if, for someone that is never really actively, right, focused on generating referrals, Elise, where would you say that they should start?
So I think lawyers like to have some kind of structure, right? As Steve said, nobody bothered teaching us this stuff in law school. Law firms don't typically teach it either. And after all, they're not in the business of teaching business development. They're in the business of serving their clients. So I think for lawyers who tend to like some structure in their lives, they tend to like to know guardrails what the bucket looks like. I think it's helpful to start thinking in terms of some kind of structure. How am I going to structure my business development activities? Otherwise, it feels like this, like I'm running out into the world, screaming into the wind, somebody, come hire me. And so I like to talk about three pillars of business development. So find some kind of structure, and I'll just quickly say what they are. So, because what we're talking about today kind of touches on a couple of them. So the three pillars of business development that I like to give to people as a structure. Pillar one is all about relationship development, and that's primarily what we're talking about here today. Developing referral relationships. So you're not going to bring in the kinds of clients you want to bring in unless you develop relationships with people. And that doesn't mean glad handing and handing out business cards and that sort of thing. It means really developing relationships where you're giving to others and delivering value. The second piece is becoming a visible expert, right? Not being a best kept secret. So one of the things that Steve and Ron and I are doing today is showing up and sharing value propositions with people, delivering value to you, in a complementary way. And we're demonstrating that we are so-called experts in our field, right? And then the third piece is what I call the 3 T's of leadership advancement, because as I mentioned before, many times people are starting to think about becoming a rainmaker or a business developer at the same time that they're stepping into leadership roles or want to step into leadership roles. And the 3 T's are thoughts. So it's about your mindset, time, devoting time to business development, not just grinding out the billable hours, and team. Who do you have around you that can help you with this so you free up your time for the highest and best use? So when we think about referrals, which is what we're going to focus on today, I encourage you to think about kind of the Venn diagram between the first 2 pillars, that relationship development, and also making sure that people in the marketplace understand the value you deliver by becoming a visible expert.
Thought, time, team. I like that. Steve, what else can we add there?
Yeah, no surprise, Elise is spot on. If you're not organized, it's just, random acts of marketing or business development, or just like, winging it has never been a strategy that people have been able to, count on. I'm going to take a different path, and that's right in line with what Elise is saying, which is mindset. I don't think if you just feel like you're going to go out and sell people or meet people to get something, and that's what this is all about, you're going to find yourself, pretty lonely on an island. Everybody's going to be like, yeah, I just met with this person and they want me to like give them all this stuff. And it's like, not to pick on a particular insurance company, but I remember meeting with one when I was younger, and they were like, yeah, give me 10 names of your friends and family, and I'm going to go annoy them to the ends of earth. And I was like, no. So I think we want to have the mindset of we need to get organized. Yes. Maybe creating a list of your contacts, the people that are your, A players, B players, C players, getting organized in that way. But then we have to have a mindset of what's our approach. Are we asking for advice? Are we there to try to complement and help them in some way? Are we there to just learn about, how it's deep in the relationship so that we can eventually talk business? Whatever it might be, we have to stop thinking about selling and that we're doing this to get something, and think more about how can we be out there to learn and help others, and understand that it's going to reciprocate eventually. We just may have to lay some groundwork first.
And if I can piggyback on that for 1 second, that mindset of giving and not getting and not selling. I mean, first of all, lawyers typically don't want to sell. And Steve, I know will agree with this, one of the biggest obstacles for many lawyers when it comes to this idea of business development is that, well, I'm not a salesperson. I don't want to get out. I don't want to be that, proverbial used car salesman. That's unseemly and it's uncomfortable. And I don't want to talk to people that way. So to Steve's point, starting with this mindset of, look, I'm going to get out there into the community, the right community. And we'll talk about what that looks like. And I'm going to be a normal person. I'm going to see how I can help other people, make connections for them, be of value to them. And then, yeah, there are ways to turn those connections into referral sources. But it's a great place to start. And one of the reasons I love that approach that Steve mentioned is that it makes it so much more fun for you. You're much more willing to do it, much more likely to do it if you don't view it as this icky sales process, but you view it as just, it's what I do in the rest of my life. I meet cool people. I help them with things. I help them, in the way I only know how to help them, that kind of thing. Make connections for them. And so you're much more likely to stick with it, because this is the classic, I don't know how many metaphors I can stick into one sentence, but this is the classic marathon, not a sprint. right? This is not something you do on Tuesday and then all of a sudden you have business. You know, I market in January, I have clients in February, I market in March, I have clients in April. This is a rinse and repeat over and over again kind of thing. So let's make it as palatable for you as possible.
Yeah, we've touched on a couple of misconceptions here that it could just come easily, or that referrals are going to happen organically, or maybe we don't have the right mindset. Sales is a dirty word, right? We might not want to do it. So making sure that we are pointed out with a strategy to do what it is that we need to do, I think is going to put everybody in a much better position. Now, as far as identifying these individuals, right? Like it's not like we just go out to a networking event. We do like the speed dating types of conferences. Like when we are looking for ideal referral partners as well as like those strategic relationships, like what's the best way for the people on this call to tackle that?
Yeah, there's an exercise that needs to be done to identify who your targets are. And if you're in a particular area of law, and you're just going out and you could say, and I hear this all the time in networking, anybody can refer me or everybody can refer me because I do estate planning or I do this or I do that, whatever it might be. That may be true. And I do like and enjoy and appreciate the ability to build out a network wide, right? Where a lot of people know you and you've spent your time networking and putting the effort in. However, there are people who are more likely to refer you than others. All right. So for example, if you're an estate planning attorney, financial planners need someone to help with their clients' estate plans. Divorce need people, they're splitting up. They have new estates. They've got to, craft an estate plan. So therapists, whatever it might be, we need to start thinking about who the targets are because that's where we may want to go to network, where those people live and exist. And then the other part of it is when you're meeting with referral sources, if you're not in a position to quickly articulate who you want to meet when they ask, and you say, well, anybody can use me because I do this, then you're missing an opportunity to allow people to really focus and think strategically about the CPA they know, the financial planner they work with, and get that introduction made, which then creates, that new strategic partner referral source that you're dreaming about and you just don't have. So I think identification of targets is going to be an absolute winner for people that take the time to work it out and think it through.
And just again, to piggyback on what Steve is saying, I agree with that you have to think this through before you run out there. You don't have time. You don't have the time, the energy, the bandwidth to run around with the scattershot marketing. So sitting down and asking yourself some questions. And I talk about like the who, what, and where exercise. And in this case, we're really focused on the who. And I think of the who as in two different parts. And I think it helps with what Steve was talking about too. If you're very clear on who your referral sources are, probably your best referral sources. And again, clients can pop in out of nowhere from time to time, and they will. But who are your best referral sources? They may be the kinds of people. So for example, financial planners, accountants, divorce lawyers, those kinds of people that Steve mentioned. Or it could be somebody that you know who has evidenced a willingness and an ability to refer you over and over again. It could be somebody not in those categories, but for whatever reason, she just thinks you're fantastic. She gets what you do and she refers to you. So those people would go on the A list that Steve mentioned. The other piece of the who is, who are your ideal clients? Who are the people that you work with over and over again and that you can serve the best? And that's going to help with the conversation that Steve mentioned before. When you're talking to your referral sources, you're going to be able to say to them, hey, you know what, Ron, the perfect client for me would be, right? It's like the question, if I were sitting on an airplane and I was sitting next to your ideal client, how would I know that they were your ideal client? Right? That's a good question to ask. And there may be somebody on this call right now, an old friend of mine who does a lot of the same work that Steve and I do, who would laugh because he would immediately say, Elise, I would never talk to someone sitting on an airplane next to me. I do it all the time.
That's what headphones are for.
Exactly. And just signal, I don't want to talk to you. But if you are running into people, like, how would I know? So you want to make sure that referral source, you're making it so easy for that referral source to refer to you. You're letting them know exactly the kinds of clients you work with and what you do for them. And because we want our referral sources to it's just so easy for them that they do it on a regular basis. We don't want to have them working hard. So knowing those two parts of the who exercise, I think will be really helpful to you as you get going.
So we're talking about approaching a lot of different people to develop these relationships. I think maybe some might be hesitant because they want to avoid feeling transactional or too salesy. Like, what type of advice do you have for those people that have that concern?
Elise?
It goes back to what we were saying before. You're not there to sell, right? You're not there to suck the money out of people's pockets. No one wants to be sold to. So you probably don't want to sell, and no one wants to be sold to, which is great because what that means is it doesn't work. So now we can take that whole idea of selling, push it over here, and never have to worry about it again. The idea now becomes it's really about matches, right? Who's a good fit for each other? Who's a good fit for the kind of work you do? How are you finding the people who you can really help? Because we're as lawyers, we're in the helping business. Yes, we're in the business of making money. It's a for-profit business, so we can't pretend that this isn't important. But if you get out there and you're trying, look, I just got off a call with somebody who I'm looking to hire potentially someone in my business. And she was very salesy there for a while until I kind of got her off that and we got into another part of the conversation and it turned me off up front, right? Because I didn't want her to know how great she was and what she thought she could do with me. She hadn't asked me one question yet. So I think going into these conversations, forgetting about selling and just being curious, lead with curiosity. Ask people about themselves. What are their hobbies? What do they like to do? Just be human. And as you get to know them more deeply, you're going to start seeing opportunities either for you to help them because you do the kind of work they need or someone they cares about needs, or you're going to find another way to help them. You're going to make a restaurant recommendation, or you're going to say, hey, when you're in New Jersey, call me. I'd love to get together or show you around. If you need a good hotel, let me know. There are lots of ways to serve people. And you can find out how to be of service to them based on being curious. And when you're curious, they love talking to you because who doesn't want to be listened to and heard?
Sure. Well, and there's an additional benefit to being curious and interested is the concept of qualifying. And I used to be, before I met my wife, 22 years ago, I wouldn't say a professional dater, but this is like the advent of all the online, I'm admitting some personal stuff here, like the advent of like JDate and Match.com. And I was like at the forefront. I was like, holy crap, I can use my sales skills. But the point of me telling you this is it's a little bit like dating, because you go on a date and in like 15 minutes, this is not a good fit. And I don't need a second date to know that. All right. And networking is similar. We go, we ask questions, we build rapport, we make a friend. That's all great. That doesn't mean that everybody gets elevated to more time, another meeting, someone that you're going to want to refer. I'll give you a quick example. I met someone, phenomenal guy, great person, had lunch together, but was an absolute novice in the area that he had claimed he was great at, which was law firm websites. Couldn't provide one name of one law firm, not one website he did. And it was like clear that he was kind of not a fit, not someone I could refer. And so I was like, great meeting you. We'll stay friends and move on. So I just think it's about taking your time and being intelligent about figuring out, like a detective, who's the person that not only can I keep moving forward with, but also it's important to say, who should I not be moving forward with, and get that time back and know you don't have to meet with them 2, 3, 4, 5 times like you might. And I'm going to share a question that could be the most important question you ask in an initial networking meeting. It's not happening at the beginning. It's happening closer to the end of a meeting. And I'm meeting, so let's say you're a lawyer, you're meeting with a CPA, could be a great referral source. You think so, you're not sure. You ask this question near the end. Just out of curiosity, Karen, in an average year, how often are you running into people that need X, whatever it is that you do? And Karen says, in 10 years, it's never come up and it probably never will. Or I probably have 5 or 10 clients like that a year that run into these kinds of issues. And maybe you ask a few additional questions, but that one qualifying question could be the big determiner of, there's a lot of opportunity here and I need to stay with this person, or you know what, this may be someone I can stay friends with, but the likelihood that they're ever going to run into business that, and maybe I could just use them to send them business because they're great at what they do. But ultimately, we want to try to figure out who we can move forward with and who we can move out, so that we don't clutter up our pipeline or our networks or wherever you want to keep track of people.
So we're kind of getting through to where the lawyer is establishing the referral relationship, right? If we've identified this is an individual that we do want to continue having conversations with, you were starting to share some strategies, right, about like maintaining and strengthening that relationship over time. Like, what are the things that some lawyers can do to stay top of mind, continually add value, have something to say when they want to reach back out to these individuals, and really make sure that that relationship's mutually beneficial?
Yeah, Lise?
I think that, look, there are a variety of things you could do. And to Steve's point, we have to be very choosy about the things that we're doing. That's why I like the idea of a little bit of planning. We're all talking about a little bit of planning beforehand goes a long way. And so keeping in mind that all the lawyers on this call are actively practicing law. In corporations, right? We've got somebody designing the widgets, somebody else makes the widgets, somebody else sells the widgets, somebody else markets the widgets, all of that sort of thing. Somebody else services the widgets. In the legal world, somehow we're supposed to do all of it at the same time. And so I think that, going back to that second pillar of business development, the visible expertise, if you are speaking on a panel, if you are writing an article, if you are doing any of those things already, inviting people in to share your expertise with them, if you think it would be helpful to them, is a really nice way of maintaining relationships with people. Hey, I remembered you mentioned this thing. I just wrote an article, or I just saw an article. You don't have to be the one writing it. I just saw something online that I thought you might find interesting or funny. Or I'm going to this event. I thought you might be interested. Would you like to join me at this event? So if you could find a way to invite somebody to something, even if it's not yours, if you can find a way to send something to them, even things like, recognizing birthdays and things like that. I mean, people say that, and sometimes I've thought, God, that's, it's just so gimmicky, and it's so, but if somebody comes up on LinkedIn and it says so-and-so's birthday, how is it hurting me to reach out and say hello? So I think that's one of the things that you can do. And then another thing that I like to do is to have people think of themselves as acting as a resource to other people. So it can, as I mentioned before, it can be like, somebody, in across the country. And hey, just think of me as a resource. I'll give you a perfect example. I had one client in New York City. She grew up in Canada. She had a very nice network in Canada, particularly in Quebec. And she said, so she says to all the lawyers in Canada, she knows, hey, if you need anything in the United States, you need a lawyer, even if it's not in my jurisdiction, even if it's not what I do, just use me as a resource. Give me a call. If I'm the right person, I'll let you know how I can help you. If I'm not the right person, I'll help get you to the right person. Right. So if you can be a people connector, that's another good way. Think about what people need, be there, stand in service of them, be there for them, make those connections for them, whether it's people or resources, and those relationships will stay sticky.
Yeah, and what Elise is sharing is the beginning of a list of things that you should be writing down right now to consider when you say to yourself, I want to help these people. I don't know how to help these people. Like, they're referring me work. I need to refer them back something. I don't have a matter for them. What can I do to be of value? What can I do to stay top of mind? So birthday, invite people to things. Elise mentioned maybe refer a strategic partner for them, maybe refer them a matter. You just found out that I'm looking to redo my patio and you refer me a landscape architect. You just heard that I'm taking my son on college tours, which is happening next week. And you say, oh yeah, it's funny. And you mentioned Utah, and I've got a great, contact in Utah that can tour you around the campus. These are things that matter to me. These are things that matter to other people. How are you commenting and sharing their social media post? Are you sending them articles that are valuable because something happened in their industry and you're the first one to send them something that relates to their industry that they could then post about, or that they could then share and get value to their people? So I think having a list of how you can add value for others is going to help you establishing longer relationships, but also value and staying top of mind when things do come your way. They're going to think of you first.
Well, go ahead, Ron.
No, no, no. I like, because we're talking about a lot of things that can be done. I was going to shift into like more of a practical system that we could share around, ways to generate referrals. Because what is it, Elise, Steve? Do I have to do 100 cold calls on Monday and 500 emails on Tuesday and go to this network event and that conference? Like, time management, like the system to put in place, like how do we get all of this under wraps so that we are staying accountable to ourselves and actually do the thing?
Yeah, that's huge, right? That's where the rubber meets the road. And so I definitely want to talk about that. And I know Steve will be chomping at the bit as well. I just want to mention a couple quick things before we get off of what Steve was talking about. So he mentioned top of mind awareness, and top of mind awareness is really important because, right, we need to that's why this consistency thing is so important, and kind of keeping in touch with people in a variety of different ways, not just like email them once a week, with the same kind of message. But to, again, be human and interact with them in different ways, because we all know that you might think somebody like Steve could be literally the best lawyer coach in the world, but if you haven't been in touch with him for a while, and you've been in touch with me last week, I might be the person you called, not because Steve isn't fantastic, but you kind of forgot about it, right? So top of mind awareness is really important. And that's why, look at something like a company like McDonald's. It's not like everybody doesn't know they have quarter pounders and chicken nuggets, but they're out there reminding us all the time because we don't want to forget, and God forbid have them go to Burger King, right? Another thing is this idea of reciprocity. So when we're talking about serving other people, there's this law of reciprocity where when you do something for someone else, even if they're not thinking about it consciously, they are looking for ways to return the favor in some way. It might be business. It might be, hey, how are you call. It could be a lot of different things. But that's why keeping in touch with people and being helpful to them is so important, because people like to return the favor. And then finally, the way that you would know that Steve is going on a college tour with his son in a normal conversation is that you've been open to this curiosity and say, hey, what's going on in your life these days? How many kids do you have? What are they up to? That kind of thing. And so that's another, great example from Steve's life where you could be helpful. So Ron, going back to this practical thing for a minute, the sticking with it is sometimes the hardest part of this. And it's really hard for lawyers because we are driven by the billable hour. So even if you are, doing some things on a flat fee basis, it's all about getting the work done. And so we tend to view business development as a nice to have when I'm not really busy, and I'm going to do it in the spaces when I think about it. But one of the ways to keep yourself accountable is to schedule time for business development. And you can use that time for strategizing. You could use that time for executing, sending out emails, for example. You might want to have an accountability partner. So maybe you get a buddy and you meet with your buddy once a month to talk about, maybe you have a friend at another firm who doesn't compete with you, and you talk once a month. What are you doing? What are you doing? Did you do the thing you said you were going to do? Maybe you do hire a coach, someone like Steve or someone like me, to help you with ideas and customizing it for yourself and figuring out how to make it happen, right? So there are lots of different ways that you can stay accountable to yourself. And one thing I like to tell people to do is to change your job description. So most lawyers, we're all pretty reliable, we're responsible, we're productive, we get the job done. If your job description is I'm a lawyer, you're going to knock that work out of the park every single day. I would say add to your job description, I'm not just a lawyer anymore, I'm also in the business of marketing my legal services. And now, because you are so reliable, responsible, and productive, you will focus your time and attention on that as well. Certainly you're not going to spend as much time as you're doing the legal work, but you're not going to just say, oh, it's a nice to have. No, this is what I do on a regular basis.
I do have a question relevant to this, but Steve, do you want to add anything else to that?
Well, I think there was some other piece of this that was like, all right, so I'm meeting all these people. I've got now 1,000 people that I'm meeting with and I'm dealing with, and I'm trying to figure out, like, how do I deal with 1,000 people? And the reality is that whether they're clients, friends, family, strategic partners, they're not all created equal as it relates to referability for them and for you. So there's the lowbrow version that I work with my clients on, which is, like, let's just say taking your clients, and you've got 100 clients, and breaking them down into 3 groups. You've got your A's, your B's, and your C's, right? The A's are the ones that pay you the most. They're the ones you have the best relationships with. They're the most likely to refer you. They, think, the greatest thing since sliced bread. Then there's the B's, who are the kind of the middle ground, and there's the C's, which did $1,000 matter with you 5 years ago. So I think you're going to think about and focus most of your energy on the A's, right? So when we think about, like, getting together with them every week on an email, regular conference calls, lunch quarterly, like whatever it is, they're going to get more of your time and attention. So it's a little bit of that 80-20 rule, right? 20% are going to get 80% of your attention. So that can be done by taking a piece of paper, putting 2 lines down the middle of it saying A, B, C, and then what are you going to do for the A's? What are you going to do for the B's? And what are you going to do for the C's? And if you want to get sophisticated with it, and Ron will chime in on this, I'm sure, but I use Lawmatics. So I've got my clients' A's, B's, C's, I've got my network ABCs, I've got my referral partner ABCs, and they're getting different messages from me all in an automated format. So I'm sending out 85 emails to my networking A's, okay? And it all looks like they're direct emails from him, giving away a little secret. They're all looking like they're getting, hey, John, this is Steve, good to see you, whatever. It's not a newsletter. And so I think having some technology, if you can either, plan for it, afford it, customize it, this is Ron's specialty, like that's going to be super helpful in how you maintain relationships and how you communicate better.
Did you peek at the chat for that answer, Steve? Michael Dilworth from Dilworth IP had a great question asking about like how vast his network is and how do I stay on top of mind of them if my network is national and don't have.
Oh yeah, I did. Yeah. I poked at that.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Perfect.
So you've got to get organized with your communication so that you're investing more in the right people, a little less in the middle group, and less in the group that's just, stay friends, just connect on LinkedIn. And that way you're going to focus your time, the little that you have, with the right people.
I think there's this idea of ability and willingness, right? So, going back to this, who is an A referral source? Former clients, the ones who, again, love you and have an ability and willingness to refer to you. Referral sources who have an ability and willingness. There are some people who have a willingness. They love you. They think you're fantastic, but they don't have that ability. And it's nothing against them. It's just reality. And then there are people who have the ability, but they don't seem to do it. It's like, even when you have the conversations with them and you know that they could be helpful to you, and you're trying to be helpful to them, they're not doing it. So again, there are ways of whittling that list down to make it so focused, and such a good list that you can rely on that list, not exclusively, but you can rely on that list. And it also reduces the stress level, because a lot of people, knowing where the next client is coming from is always a big question. Like, oh my God, I have clients now, but what if next week I don't ever have a client again? Some of this is a stress reduction exercise too. So the more focus you can get, the more, choosy and circumspect you can be about it, the better off you're going to be.
Awesome. So we talked about getting started. We talked about staying top of mind, developing that initial strategy, putting in some practical systems, workflows in place so that you could obviously continue to do the work and stay top of mind with individuals. What I want to shift to now is, now that we've got these relationships, maybe we're a little bit more seasoned, we've been doing it for a little while, refining and scaling that strategy. So like a little bit of a pile on to Michael's question about like having the large network, but how do we move beyond just the one-to-one networking? So additional strategic partnerships, or, I know how I would answer this because I do a lot of this more on LinkedIn and socially as well, but like other masterminds or industry events, like what are the things that we could do beyond just the one-to-one to make it scalable?
Well, I think that's where a lot of the thought leadership comes in. And how are you getting your name out there, as the premier person in your space? And so whether it's writing a book, writing articles, getting them published, podcasts are phenomenal. I mean, one of the most wonderful things about having a podcast is that I get to meet Ron, I get to meet Elise, I get to interview great people. And if you think that's just for content, you're mistaken. That's a side perk as far as I'm concerned. It's really the relationships that I'm developing. And these are, some would call them competitors. Other would say, Mike, I think I told Elise this one time. I said, I think our competition is lawyer apathy, right? Just lawyers not wanting to change and not wanting to do anything about growing their books. It's not really the fact that there's a lot of lawyer coaches right now. I mean, that's a great thing because there's a need. I mean, there's a reason why there are. So ultimately, we can focus on individual relationships with people we have, but we can also develop new ones. But if you can put yourself up by giving education, giving information. I spoke with a group of law practice management students at American University earlier today. That's developing a stronger relationship with the teacher who's my new friend, and I want to help her out. And so I think, what can we do to help and give and demonstrate that as a part of networking, as a part of how we get, how we get referrals in the door.
I so agree with you, Steve. And it goes back to, again, those pillars. I mentioned the Venn diagram. So there's the relationship piece, and then there's this thought leadership piece, the visible expertise piece. I have this terrible joke. It's like if an expert falls over in the forest and no one knows about it, right? Is your expertise really serving you? And so, for me, and I know, Steve does some of this. I have a podcast as well, although 500 episodes is a dream at this point. I think I've got about 170. But I started the podcast because it was the pandemic, and I am that strong extrovert who needed to interact with the outside world when we were sitting here, locked down. But there are different purposes for podcasts. So for me, it really is about developing these relationships, raising my profile in the legal community, having that top of mind awareness where a podcast comes across somebody's desk on a weekly basis. Through that, though, through that visible expertise of pillar number 2, I am developing those relationships in pillar number 1. I develop relationships in pillar number 1, and then I ask people to be on my podcast, or they ask me to do a keynote for an organization or an association or something like that. So I think that a couple of other things to do, this kind of one-to-many idea where you can't hit each person individually. I think volunteering and getting deeply involved in organizational life is really important. And again, remember your who, what, and where. You want to be where your prospective clients are hanging out or your prospective referral sources are hanging out, right? So for me, I'm very deeply involved in the Legal Marketing Association. I'm very deeply involved as a faculty member with something called the Managing Partner Forum, because I want to meet the marketing people who could bring me in, and I want to meet the managing partners who often are the ones making the decisions. And so I'm on faculty, I speak. So you guys can do all of that as well. You have so much information to offer, practical tips to offer. And that's one way to get people in a one-to-many sort of relationship where you don't have to do, call after call after call with every individual person. So there's so much opportunity there like that. And sitting down and figuring out how your prospective clients and referral sources get their information. What are they reading? What podcasts do they listen to? So and just to give one example, using Steve and me as an example, Steve, I can't even remember how we met, but I do know that I wound up being on your podcast. I then was conflicted out of something, and I thought I need to find my client wanted a referral to another business development coach. I called Steve. Well, I wasn't surprised. A month later, Steve said, "Hey, I know this guy, Ron Latz, and he's doing a program and he's looking for another coach. Would you like to come along?" So, Steve and I are, as he said, we could be called competitors, and yet we're trying to serve one another when it makes sense. And that's coming back. I feel that it's coming back to me tenfold. As if I can do something for Steve, it just occurred to him to try to do something for me as well. And it's not mercenary. We've become friendly with each other, and I care that I want him to be happy in his business. He wants me to be happy in my business. There are 1.3 million lawyers in this country. Neither one of us can serve them all. So if you take that, again, that goes back to mindset, right? But how can you serve other people and do it in a bigger way?
Beautifully said.
We were touching there a lot on basically those that do have a vast network that could be nationally. And I just thought it's a good opportunity because I don't want to neglect those that might not have that. But if you were to give advice around someone that is just starting completely from scratch, like what's the best way to approach this? How do they start identifying these individuals? Like, what are some of the things that you would put into place to help them start building that referral book?
I mean, there are people that are senior to you that have done this before, right? So if you're a young litigator at a firm and you've got, a dozen senior litigators over you, you should be talking to them. You should be getting mentored by them. You should be asking them a ton of questions. How did they build their book? Where do they get most of their clients from? Get help to not have to figure this whole thing out on your own. Become a student of the game of marketing, business development, LinkedIn. There's so many amazing ways that you can learn that we didn't have coming up, right? I'm a Gen X. There was a time where I got a phone book thrown. Do anybody even know what a phone book is, right? If you're under 30, you're like, what's that? But it's like, it's a listing, a paper listing of everything. And I got that thrown in my lap, like, hey, go figure out who you're gonna, sell. I was like, holy crap. I mean, the world today is so much better. your phones, LinkedIn, mentors. I mean, just there's so much information, books and videos and everything you could imagine to learn this game called, business development, networking, marketing. So I think you have to go back and become a student, but learn from people around you. It doesn't have to be, just the coaches. I mean, we're happy to provide content to help you with that. Ultimately, if you can figure it out on your own, that's what most lawyers do. But the smart ones figure out, how to learn from the best, learn how to learn from people that have made the mistakes so they don't have to. So
I also think it's important. So I agree with everything you said, Steve. And I think it's important if you're in a law firm where, sometimes law firms will do these things where they'll bring some of their own rainmakers and do a panel discussion. And I think what sometimes happens is that young lawyers walk out of those things and they go, oh my God, like I can't do that, right? Because Ron does it that way and that's not me and I'm never going to be that. I can't do it that way. So when you're learning from those around you, make sure that you understand that these are just examples. So when Steve publishes his book, for example, you're going to get so many different kinds of examples from people who have done it in such different ways. There are principles of business development that stand the test of time, right? We know that some things work and some things don't. But for any individual, if you're just starting out, remember, you don't have to do it the way the senior partner at your firm does it. Right? The big rainmaker at your firm, maybe he did it differently, she did it differently. You get to take those principles and craft your approach to be right for you. So you can take ideas from people, but don't get like a deer caught in the headlights and say, oh my God, I don't want to do that. So that means I can't develop business. There's always a way for you to figure it out, no matter your personality type, your practice area, your geography, your likes and dislikes. There's a way for you to figure it out. And one way to start, and listen, if you're a first-year associate, a fourth-year associate, you're probably not going to bring in a big client overnight. But if you can develop the skills, the behaviors, and the mindsets now of rainmakers and be doing some of these activities, even if you know you're not going to see results right away, you're going to have success in the future because you're already going to be networking. You're already going to be nurturing that network, meeting people, knowing how it works. And when your peers are in decision-making roles, which they might not be in yet, but they will be, you're going to be the person that's been there the whole time, not the person that just comes out of the woodwork when all of a sudden they make general counsel. It's like everybody wants to be their best friend the day they make general counsel. But if you've been there the whole time, you're not going to be the 8th-year associate or the 10th-year associate saying, oh my God, what do you mean you want me to have a book of business before you make me partner?
yeah.
Our mutual connection here, Janet, is asking you to share what the secret to success in business development is for lawyers. Kind of taken away from one of the last questions I had teed up for us, but anything that we could share here about the secret to success?
I mean, I think the secret to success is just doing it. I don't know what Steve's going to say, but I think, all the things we talked about, just doing it, because the fact is most people, most lawyers are not doing this. Most lawyers are service partners or, associates for somebody else who's bringing in the business. That's why there's so much opportunity there. There are so many people that need your help. There are so many clients out there. Lawyers don't go to law school because they want to become salespeople. If they wanted to become salespeople, they wouldn't have spent a gazillion dollars on law school. They would have gotten a sales job and become salespeople. And so I think part of it is just making up your mind, again, that this is part of your job description and you are going to learn and you are going to be a sponge and you don't have to have it all figured out right away. As lawyers, we love to be the smartest person in the room. You don't need to know it all. Just get started. And my father has this expression and I make fun of him all the time for it, so don't tell him I'm using it. But he'll say to me, Elise, all the lights don't turn green at the same time, right? You don't sit in your driveway waiting for all the lights to turn green and you have it all figured out. Just get in the car and start driving.
Yeah. The idea that lawyers have to go out and sell, you're selling all the time, whether you know it or not. I mean, you're talking to your clients and getting them to agree to terms. You're getting them to agree to a certain way of thinking, a strategy. My sister's a therapist, and our biggest argument we ever got in that I won was she said, I'm not in sales. I go, well, Karen, how do you get business? Well, I speak and I do this and I do that. I go, all right, so marketing, sales, business development, whatever we want to call it, we're all doing it anyway. I think the idea that we can look at the law as helping clients. What do you think sales is? What do I do when I work with a lawyer who wants to go from a 500,000 to 1 million or 1 million to 2? Am I selling them something? No, they're buying that opportunity to learn and grow and develop a bigger book and have a sustainable career. All right. So I think we have to take the pressure off that we're in sales, and we have to just think about how can we help people? And that could be through legal means, that could be, and they can't get to legal means without hiring you, right? Because they're working with a knucklehead attorney up the street. So, one way or the other, we have to think about the mindset, yes, but also that we don't have to be in sales. We just have to be consistent in how we get out there and help people solve problems. In order to do that, we have to have plans and systems and ways of approaching things. Otherwise, it could be a tremendous time suck. And I don't think anybody in this room wants to be, spending hundreds and hundreds of hours a year of unproductive time doing this task.
Just want to comment. Love to see we've got some lawyers connecting via LinkedIn already in the comment thread. So if anybody else does want to throw their LinkedIn profile, feel free, and we can all connect here. Great networking opportunity. Let's talk about just some of the challenges for a minute, right? Like I've been in sales and business development almost my entire career. Obviously, referral partners come and go. I've got some ideas as to what I would do, but there are instances where some referral partners, right? They stop sending you referrals. What do you do in those situations?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. So I have a great analogy that I share with my clients. I'll share with you now. If I wanted to be so we'll say Cubs, not Sox, okay, but they're both terrible. And I'm going to be a baseball scout for the Cubs. So to Elise's point, where am I going to go? Am I going to go to the Little League park in my neighborhood, or am I going to go to Japan, Dominican, Korea? Am I going to go to the colleges and in the minor leagues and look at where the best players are? And then let's say I find a great player that I think can hit and run and catch and do all those things. Do I immediately put them on my starting lineup and kick a starting lineup member off? The answer is no. You bring them up slowly, but as a potential replacement for someone who gets injured, a potential replacement for someone who's underperforming. So I want you to think about recruiting for your strategic partner dream team the same way. Okay, initially it's going to take a lot of effort to get the right people on your team. Think about maybe 7 to 10 players that are the CPAs, the financial planners, the lawyers that don't do what you do, whatever it might be, and you're creating that team. Great, but that doesn't mean it's over, because you are going to have people that underperform. In fact, when I first started doing this in my business, I had a cork board up on my wall. I don't have it anymore. It's all digital. But I remember their business cards had pins in them, and I had 10 names on a cork board. And when someone started underperforming and I had other people in the wings waiting to come up to the major leagues on my team for referrals, I pulled the pin. It was almost ceremonial. I pulled the pin off and I'd replace it with the other card, so there was never an open gap. And I think you want to think about it that way, that you need to keep recruiting. But when you get the right people and you've got 2 or 3 really good people in a particular sector, you're not going to be able to refer that many more. So I think be recruiting all the time, but you can recruit less once you get the right people on the team initially. So that's just another way of of putting it into perspective of how we want to develop these referral partners on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. You kind of have to know when it's not a good fit anymore, when to quit. And it doesn't mean you have to go bash the person over the head, with a rock. People move on, right? The natural course of life is, we don't necessarily have all the same friends we had when we were little, that kind of thing. And so people move away from each other. And if it's not a good fit, if they're moving away from you, then it's okay for you to move away from them too, and to find somebody else to potentially fill that spot. But, again, back to Steve's point about being intentional. We're talking here about being intentional about business development, and specifically intentional about cultivating a referral network. And so, a perfect example is when I first started coaching, I got involved with the local bar association here, and there was a very active solo and small firm section. I got involved with it. The people were really nice. And what I noticed, what they used to joke that we're kind of like, all of the benefits of being at a big firm without all the headaches of being at a big firm, because there were pockets of them that had created intentional groups where they got to know each other and they would agree that they would refer business to each other. And so while you don't necessarily have to have an agreement with somebody, if you're intentional about it, and also you start referring to them where you can, that's going to start coming back to you. But let the people go. There are 8 billion people on this planet, and they're not going to all like you, and you're not going to all like them, and you're not going to be a good fit for each other. So find the people that are.
I'm going to add one more thing. There's a problem that I'm seeing happen pretty regularly where we get frustrated with a strategic partner who isn't referring us. Like we start off great, we refer each other some things, and then it just kind of dies out. I try to be self-reflective and say, have I spent time with this person? Have I been in front of them lately? Has it been 6 months? Forget about what I'm sending them. Maybe I'm sending that person more than they're sending me. Do I need to meet with them and just say, hey, let's go through each other's LinkedIn, or let's sit down and just talk about the lawyers that we know that we could refer to each other. Let's just schedule a time to get together. And maybe you're not doing that. Maybe you're just expecting that, the distance that's apart doesn't matter. It does. And so you're not staying on top of that partner. It's like you're not inviting them to come to practice with your dream team, if we're staying with that analogy. So I think sometimes we need to coach people on and help them help us. And there may not be enough of that being done. We just sort of expect people know what we do, or that they know when to refer us. And it's not always the case. We sometimes have to step up and do a little bit more.
I think that that's really true. I think that a lot of times we make assumptions. So we assume that people understand what we do enough to be able to make a referral to us, right? There are people that I've known for a long time in my family. They have this vague sense that I have a business. It doesn't mean they understand what I do every day. And so it's on us. Remember when I said we want to make it as easy as possible for our referral partners? We want to make sure that they understand how to refer to us. And we want to deeply understand how we can refer to them. The other thing that I think happens is, and again, I know I keep beating a dead horse with these pillars, but I find them helpful. So pillar 1, I talk about nurturing and growing relationships, right? And I view that as 2 different things. What Steve's talking about is making sure you're nurturing the network you already have. I think we all have a tendency to go, yeah, blah, blah. I've got these people in my network. I've got to run out and meet new people. And yes, you do, right? That's the grow part. But don't forget the nurture part. We want to maintain those relationships, make sure we're paying attention to them. Me calling up Ron or Steve and saying, hey, let's get together for lunch. And then me saying, what's going on in your business? How can I be of help to you? Right. And so not just running around and always looking for the new bright, shiny object, but to remember, to really engage with the people that we've already met.
Yeah.
Love it. All right. I have, if we can get 3 more in with the 8 minutes left, 2 of them came in before the session. And then I've got the last one for the key takeaways for the group. But one question, this one came in from LinkedIn on one of the posts that I had shared about promoting the event. They were asking, it seemed more so about like the misconceptions that we talked about earlier from networking events and how it can be a little tight or stuffy. It's like, how do we turn that just random acquaintance that we just met into a referral partner?
Yeah. I mean, it's random acquaintance. I mean, and I'll take it a step further. There's a lot of lawyers that are frustrated because they know high profile people, general counsel, CEOs, and they're in what I call the friend zone, right? And we all know about the friend zone. And they don't really understand why they're not getting the work. Like they're a better attorney than maybe who they're working with, and it's not happening. So there's a ton of different approaches, but ultimately, I think it's about being interested and curious and saying, look, I'd love to just learn more about how you spend your day. I'd love to learn what's on your plate. I'd love to learn more about what you're doing. What's the company going to do in 2025? How are you approaching the world with the political and economic turmoil that's going on right now? And learn what's going on. And sure enough, someone might share a problem with you or multiple problems with you, some that you can help them with through maybe connections, and some that might be like, through your law firm, and they didn't realize that you're a lawyer that does IP, but you have a full service firm and they've got big litigation issues that aren't being addressed with their current firm, and you're able to bring in that friend into the firm to get the business because you asked those questions and showed true concern. So I think that's part of it, and I think it's also just about again going back to what I said earlier. the acquaintance may be valuable beyond a friendship. There could be business there, and you want to ferret that out. In other cases, not so much. And so it's, not everyone's going to do business with you. Not everybody should. But I think it's important to sort of qualify or disqualify people in and out of your life, not as friends and not as relationships, but to take away the stress that you're feeling, that there's opportunity there that you're not getting that you should. And if you can get to what's real and understand what's going on behind the curtain, that's going to make you feel more relaxed around that person versus always thinking in the back of your head, why aren't they referring me? Or why aren't they giving me this? Or why aren't they doing business with me? Get to the honesty of it. And I think everyone will be happier for it.
I think it's just what Steve is saying. It's all about the follow-up. You don't have to follow up with everybody. There are some people that just aren't going to be a good fit. You don't think they're fun and interesting. You've got nothing in common with each other. That's okay. It is a little bit like dating. You're not just going to start going out on dates with people that you have no interest in, and there's nothing in common there. You can't follow up with everybody, and you can't follow up with even the people you can follow up with. You can't do it all in the same way at the same level. But the magic is in the follow-up. You cannot expect to meet somebody once and all of a sudden your phone starts to ring. Just doesn't happen.
Good more. This one again came in on LinkedIn, does have a little bit of a marketing twist to it. It's from an agency owner, and I think I know where they're going. It's mostly about like calculating acquisition costs for clients. But how do you recommend that lawyers account for referral time and money in their P&L?
Well, that's going kind of deep, and for many, especially corporate attorneys and people at law practices, that's not how you're going to factor it in. I mean, I've been working with lawyers for 17 years and 21 years in business, and that is more of a marketing question. I think if we're talking about relationships, it's just about how much time are you spending with people and what are you getting out of it in return? And by the way, what are you doing for them? And so I think tracking that through a CRM or tracking that through a journal so that you understand the amount of time and effort you've put into a particular relationship to understand if you should cut bait or stay in it and why. That's going to matter more to you than what not conversion rate, but like what the ROI or what the specific technical rate's going to be. And you can figure out, I've gotten 500,000 from this person over the last couple of years, or I've gotten $5. I mean, you're going to know fairly quickly if it's a relationship that you should keep investing time in.
Sure. I think it's also driven mostly for like personal injury contingency-based practices where that referral fee should be incorporated or at least included within the formula for calculating your acquisition costs. Yeah. All right. 3 minutes left here. If there was just one takeaway that everybody that listened to this call that they should bring back and implement for themselves, Elise, what would it be?
I would say, again, change your job description. Make up your mind that you're in this for the long haul because this is going to bring value to you and your firm. And it brings value in so many ways beyond just the money. So many ways. Gives you the power of choice. You can call the shots in your own career in a much deeper way. And then chunk it into quarters. Set some goals for yourself. So maybe I want to meet 3 new people per month in Q2. Or I want to do 3 lunches, per month in Q2. Or I'm going to go to 2 events of this organization, in Q2 and Q3. Whatever it is, so that you see incremental changes happening for you. You can't just say, I'm going to go out and develop business, because then you're just going to get overwhelmed. You're not going to be able to track anything. You're not going to know what to do first. You're not going to know what you're doing. And just to go back, and this is the last thing I'll say, is for the question that the marketing person just asked, like Steve, I mean, I don't do those kinds of numbers, so I can't be helpful with that. But what I do tell all of my clients, most of whom are working in firms with at least one person other than themselves, is track your non-billable time. I don't care if your firm even has a number for it. If they do, fantastic. Use that. Don't just say, oh yeah, blah, blah, I did that thing. Write it down so that you know where your time is going. And at the end of the year, even if the law firm hasn't asked you for it, you can say, I want you to be aware that I am focused on business development. I'm committed to it. And this year I spent 200 hours on business development. 100 of it was on relationship development, and 100 of it was this, whatever, writing articles, thought leadership, etc. That information is going to help you see. And then when you see your book of business growing, or you don't see it growing the way you want to, then you can make those judgment calls that Steve was talking about, because you have at least a little bit of data and you don't say, my God, where did all my time go?
Yeah. mean, the world is changing every day. I mean, I watch the news. It's crazier every day. As a lawyer, you should be focused on two things. Being the best lawyer you can be. Nobody can take away your education and your experience. And be a great business developer because nobody can take away your clients and your reliance on other people goes away. When you can rely on yourself and be an entrepreneur within your firm or on your own, that's going to be a critical element to autonomy, freedom, independence. And so whether you learn it on your own or whether you learn it from a coach or whatever the means are, those are the two most important things that you need to know as a lawyer today.
Awesome. Well, Elise, Steve, we are at time. Thank you so much. And thank you everybody that joined. If you don't mind, there will be the survey at the end of this. So once you leave, please select anybody that you would like to have some follow-up conversations with. We will be having and coming back with another installment of the LegalFenix webinar series next month. More on those details to come soon. But thank you again, everybody. We appreciate the time and hope this was valuable. Please send any and all feedback. We love to hear it.
Thanks, Ron.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.